What's going on, everyone? Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Today we're going to take a look at the Aventure 2, the updated version of the Aventon Aventure bike. And they made a couple tweaks to it to upgrade it, but didn't change the purchase price any. So that's good. It's still coming in at just $18.99, and I have ridden a lot of e-bikes. I think it's well worth that price point. I think it's a good price point for this bike. And this is here courtesy of Aventon. They gave me a chance to ride and test and review this bike, and I put about 50 miles on it so far. So I think I'm ready at this point to give you some information about it based on my ride experience. And if you're interested in e-bikes and you've been searching and surfing and trying to find the one you want, you've probably come across a bunch of info on this bike. It just came out at the end of January, so it's getting in the hands of the consumers and the e-bike reviewers, and there's some information out, a lot of review videos. So rather than drag you through a long overview video with all the tech specs and everything, I'm going to abbreviate it just a little bit and try to maybe just have a conversation with you about what the ride experience was like. I'll do my best to relay what it's like to ride this bike, all the little quirks and things that came up as I ride it and the things I noticed, what you might want to know if you're going to consider buying the Aventure 2. So let's get started. All right, so the bike you see before you is from Aventon, and it is the updated model of the Aventure. This is the 2.0 version. This is the cobalt blue, and it is a regular frame size. We'll get into that a little bit later. I specifically asked for the regular and the step through because I wanted to try to get the smallest version of the bike as I could to show you what it's like for a small person to ride it and a large person to ride a small bike. So we'll show you that later in the video as well. But before I get really rolling, I do want to give you just the 60-second breakdown of the specs, just so you know what we're working with here. So editor, go ahead and start the clock for me. This bike comes in multiple frame sizes and also multiple colors. Current price is $18.99. Both rack and fenders are included in the purchase price. It's got a 750 watt rear hub motor, peaks over 1100 watts. It has Tektro Hydraulic Brakes. The battery pack is 48 volt, 15 amp hour. It's integrated into the frame. It has a color display with phone connectivity. Top speeds on the bike are 20 miles an hour using the thumb throttle, or 28 plus if you're pedaling. It's a class 3 e-bike, can also be programmed as a class 2. This bike weighs 79 pounds. The weight carrying capacity is 400 pounds. Step through height is 18.5 inches. The minimum seat height is 30 inches. The front chainring is 48 tooth and the rear is 1232. And again, it's an 8-speed bike. Also comes with a complete lighting package. So you get headlight, tail light, brake lights, and turn signals. And I should also mention the bike has a torque sensor and not a cadence sensor, which is a big upgrade. I like the torque sensors a lot better. All right, so now that you know what we're working with, the first thing I want to discuss is just the frame sizes. Again, this is the regular frame size, so the smaller size. And they say this step through is meant for people 4'11" to 5'7". I would agree with that. I would agree. I think someone that is 4'11" could ride this bike. The seat goes very low. My 5'3" wife was able to mount this bike and ride very easily. Not something she's typically able to do on a fat tire bike like this. Normally their seat heights are 32, 34 inches. With this one going down to 30, that's incredibly low. I think that's awesome. Not many companies will offer different frame sizes for their bikes. It's usually just one size fits all. Great that you can get a smaller bike for a smaller stature person. And when Aventon asked me, what color and what frame and what size bike I wanted, I specifically asked for this. I wanted this step through and I wanted this small frame so that my wife would be able to ride this. The other reason I wanted this is I wanted to show what it's like for me at 6 feet tall. What's it like for me to ride this bike? Is it too small for me? And the answer is absolutely not. It fits me very well. I am very comfortable riding this bike. The seat also goes up high enough where I can make it so I'm tippy-toeing this bike. It goes plenty high if you're someone that wants to get that full leg extension to pedal. Most e-bikers I don't think care about that, but it goes plenty high for me. I'm, again, 6 feet tall, 34-inch inseam, and had no trouble riding this bike. Now there's one last thing I want to say about the frame sizes, just to plant the seed in your brain and why you might want to get the smaller frame size, is that if you notice the bike has front suspension, no rear suspension. If you plan on adding a suspension seat post, you're going to be raising your minimum seat height by 3 inches because of that post. You might make the bike too tall for you if you have the larger frame size and you add the suspension post. By getting the smaller frame size, you've got maybe a couple extra inches there to work with. All right, now let's just start going through the bike a little bit here, and I'll point out some things I noticed from my ride experience with this bike. First is that it's not a quick release wheel. through axle on there. Got to get your wrenches out if you want to take the front wheel off. The brakes, I like that they changed to the Tektro brakes. The previous version had the Bengal Aries 3, and the brake pads were really hard to find when they wore out. These ones, you can find the brake pads Amazon for like 20 bucks. The tires, 26x4 fat tires. They're Innova, I think is the brand. And what I noticed here is they were very quiet. Surprisingly quiet. I don't know, maybe they're like a softer rubber compound or something, but they have an aggressive tread pattern, but they're very quiet. Quieter than the CSTs and the Kendas, and I like that about them. They weren't really roaring down the street, so good tire choice there. This is a Zoom front fork. It's got Aventon branding on there, but the Zoom fork does have multiple levels of adjustment here on the top, so it wasn't a cheap fork. It's a nice fork on there. The fenders are metal fenders. They're branded. They can be a little bit loud when there's like stones kicking up into them, but I think they look a lot better than the wraparound plastic fenders. They really just add to the overall beauty of this bike. I'm always impressed with the bikes from Aventon. They just look very well finished. I mean, the fenders look really nice. This is a really nice rear rack. This is upgraded from the last rack on the previous version. I like this one better. It had this weird thing here you had to add though as you're setting up the bike. It had this bar that I guess keeps the rack more rigid, and you had to install that as you're putting the bike together. I don't know why this isn't just here from the factory, if maybe they designed the rack and it wasn't strong enough and they add this aftermarket piece on. I don't know, but you have to put this on as you put the bike together. Not a big deal, just 2 bolts. But it is a really nice rack, better I think than the previous version. It does have this adjustment here where you can slide the rack forward and backward, but I've got it slid the entire way back. You can only go forward from here really, but you don't want to do that because if you want to put your seat down, you're going to end up hitting the rack. So all this adjustment's pretty useless, honestly, because it's got to be in that position so it clears the seat. Suppose you could slide your seat a little bit farther forward, but not all that much. But the look of this bike is great. I love all the graphics on it. They do a really good job with the paint job and the graphics on the Adventure bike. This paint is the cobalt blue, and it's not a gloss, it's not flat, it's kind of like a dull pearl, I'll call it. It's got a little bit of a shine to it. It looks really classy, but everything's finished off nicely. Chain slap guard here. This is probably one of the most robust derailleur guards I've ever seen. Usually they're not this thick, but this feels like it could really protect the bike if it fell over. A lot of times when I get bikes, this ends up taking a hit during shipping and it's just smashed into the derailleur. You take a lot of force to push this into the derailleur. The brake lights look really cool. They're integrated into the frame of the bike. All the wires are hidden and you've got them on both sides. So you got brake lights, taillight, turn signal on each side. Previous model only had it on one side, so I love to see that it's on both now. It looks really cool. Everything on this bike is branded. I know some people don't like when there's the branding and the logos all over everything, but this bike's got that. Just so you know, it's everywhere. It's on the rack, it's on the fenders, it's on the seat, it's on the screen, the headset, even the little rubber pieces right here, it's on there. So there's Aventon all over this bike, on the forks, it's even on the kickstand. But it all looks really nice. The overall finish of this bike is just great. Got even the grips are branded Aventon there, nice soft rubber grips. But back to what I noticed about this bike riding. Okay, so we talked about tires are quiet, the front forks work great, the ride position I really like. Most of the bikes I get, I'll add either a stem riser right here or a different set of handlebars to give me a more upright ride position, but I don't really feel like I need to do that with this bike. The way it's set up, the ride position is pretty upright. It's very comfortable. Shifting the mechanical gears on this bike was great. You've got trigger shifters right here instead of the ugly thumb shifter. I like these a lot better. They work really well. It's an 8-speed, and here's what I noticed about this. So it's a 48 tooth in the front chainring and 12 in the back, 1232. And when you're over 30 miles an hour, you still have a ton of feeling in the pedals. This bike never ghost pedals. There's always feeling in the pedals. All the controls on the bike are comfortable. They're easy to get to. You do have a thumb throttle, not a twist throttle. Thumb throttle, interesting one. I've never seen one like that before, but it works nice. It looks really nice. Here's another couple things that you might want to know about this bike. You got to turn the battery on first down here, and then you can turn the screen on. So we'll pop this on really quick. And what I noticed about the screen, so the first is I wear polarized sunglasses. It's pretty hard to see this screen with the polarized lenses in my glasses. I can read the mile per hour and maybe the odometer. It's hard to see the pedal assist level and the battery life with the glasses on. So weird quirk, right? You wouldn't know unless you got on the bike. You got 4 levels of assist. You got Eco, Tour, Sport, Turbo. I rode most of the time in Sport. I like a lot of power on demand, so I kept it in that Sport mode. And it's got good power. I mean, it had plenty of power to get up and going and climb hills. I did take it out to the hill climb and you know, throttle only up the hill. We test the bikes against all the other 750 watt bikes. This one wasn't the fastest, it wasn't the slowest, but it did have solid power. No issue climbing that hill under throttle power only. The top speeds, I mean, you're gonna top out at 20 miles an hour with the throttle. That's what it's set at. It cannot go beyond 20 miles an hour with the throttle. If you pedal, you can get it up over, you can get to 30 miles an hour real easy. No problem hitting 30 on this with minimal effort. I was able to get it to like 32.5 miles an hour in turbo mode, pedaling in 8th gear with some pretty good force on the pedals. So power-wise, this bike gives you plenty of power and plenty of speed. I didn't really feel it was lacking in that department at all. But back to the screen, the couple things I noticed, of course, couldn't see it with the lenses real well. And then you have an odometer in your time, and then as you toggle through, so it gives you average speed, max speed. Look at that, 32.9, I guess I went on the bike. The CO2 reduced, your trees saved, and then you're back to odometer. It doesn't have a trip meter, which is interesting. You can't keep track of your trips, that I found anyway. And if you go into the settings, just hold up and down. The first thing is clear trip data, but there's no trip meter. So I don't know. Maybe that's a feature they could add in the future. It's not a huge deal. Control pad over here is really easy to use. Nice soft buttons. Power's in the middle. You know, pedal assist up and down. And then these right here are your turn signals. So they're one touch just to get the turn signal on. And it's so you can see it flashing there. And it self-cancels. After about, I think it's 15 seconds, it will self-cancel. So you don't have to worry about leaving the turn signals on and it's on for 20 minutes. It shuts itself off. Let's see, there it's off, it went out. So what was it, about 15 seconds or so? You got turn signals both sides, and it shows you on the screen too with an arrow right there that your signal is flashing and on. So you can cancel it yourself if you want. You just push the button again and it cancels it. But you do have tail lights and brake lights as well. If I pull the brake here, you can see them light. Very nice looking brakes and lighting package on this bike. I do like that about it. The turn signals, what I can tell you about that is from riding the bike is I didn't really use them all that much. I honestly forgot that they were there. There's not many bikes that have turn signals. And I have had bikes in the past with turn signals. I don't really use them all that much. A lot of times I just forget they're there because I'm on a bike. And the other thing is, in traffic, I feel like the cars are looking at me as a bicycle, right? And they want to see hand signals. They're expecting hand signals. I'm not sure if they're expecting actual flashers on bikes yet. So when I'm riding around, I'm normally hand signaling. I think that's what people are anticipating. And I want them to know, I want traffic to know what I'm doing. But it is a cool feature to have. Now there's one last thing I want to tell you about the display screen. And that is that the programming, so if I go back into the settings, you see the programming again. The first thing is clear trip data. You can change your screen brightness, the units, you want miles or kilometers, whatever, connect to app. There's no way to set the speed limit using just the bike. If you want to change this bike from a class 2 at 20 miles an hour up to a class 3 at 28 plus, you must use the Aventon app. That is the only way to do it. You can't do it just the bike. You got to download the app to change the speed limit on the bike. I'm not a huge fan of that. I don't want to have to use my smartphone to program the bike. A lot of times I'm out riding e-bikes just to get away from my phone for 5 minutes. I really wish they put the feature back in where you can program it from the bike, but you only got to do it once. You just download the app, you know, create username and password for your account, and then you'll scan like a QR code on the screen of the bike. It'll connect it to your phone, and then you can go in and you can change the speed limit. And once you set it, it's done. You never have to go back in and use it again if you don't want to. You can go in there and take advantage of that community and track your rides and share your rides and pictures and all that if you want that feature. And if you don't, you only got to use it once just to change the speed limit. All right, what else do we notice about riding the Aventure? It rides really tight. There's not a lot of shakes and rattles and noises when you're going over bumps. It's real tight. I don't know how else to describe it other than that. Nothing's clanging around. It feels like it's just put together solid, put together well. It's not really noisy. It kind of goes back to that fit and finish of this bike. In terms of bikes at this price point, $1899, this is one of the best finished bikes that I've been on. A lot of times you can really notice the parts that they kind of cheaped out on to save the money And it didn't do that here. I mean, the parts they usually cheap out on are like the forks, but you got a decent set of forks. The fenders, you got really like upgraded looking fenders here, double-sided aluminum front chain ring. It's a really nice, sturdy, well-made rear rack. The seat looks sharp. Even the grips, these, I think they're Velo brand, but they're branded Aventon here, but they're nice and soft. I like the grips a lot. The Tektro brakes are nice. I mean, the screen with the connectivity, it just doesn't look like a cheap bike. Even the throttle, this thumb throttle, it's not your basic thumb throttle. It looks a little bit, I don't know, for some reason it looks higher end. I've never seen one like this. I do like that thumb throttle. Another thing I want to mention is the battery placement. It's inside the frame, which gives it that sleeker look. And I like that there's pops out the side instead of the front. It's really easy to get the battery in and out, just pops right out the side, as opposed to the front, which you got to contend with the front fender and the wheel in the way. So definitely prefer the side entry of the battery. Now, let's answer the million-dollar question that people ask me all the time. What's the range of this bike? What is the range? Gosh, that question. I mean, there's so many factors that go into that, with the weight of the rider, how much cargo, what's your tire pressure, what's the weather. I mean, are you on pavement, uphill, downhill? There's so many factors. But I did a range test on this bike because I know you want to know. So here's one piece of data. I weigh 180 pounds and I rode this bike as I would normally ride it. I just went out and I was doing all my riding and filming all the clips and everything, just riding this fat tire bike like I would normally ride, using the throttle as much as I want, going up hills from a stop. I was in sport mode pretty much the entire time. So it goes Eco, Tour, Sport, Turbo. So I'm in the second highest level. And I would say, I mean, this is very unscientific, but I would say I pedaled probably 50 to 60% of the time. That's how much I pedaled. And the other, 50 to 40%, I was using just throttle only. I use a lot of throttle. That's how I like to ride e-bikes, right? And I think most people do. I think that's how people ride. They use a lot of throttle. About, let's just say 50% pedaling, 50% throttle to be safe. And I got 31 miles. Now on the website, they say 30 miles throttle only. I don't think I could do that. And they say up to, or it's like 60 miles. If you're gonna use a low pedal assist, you could get up to like 60 miles. On just my typical riding, I got 31 miles out of it, which is fine for me. I mean, I usually never ride more than 20 miles at a time anyway. But that at least gives you some kind of indication of what you're gonna get range-wise. These companies put pretty big numbers on the websites, which probably are achievable under, ideal circumstances with lightweight riders on flat level ground and pedaling a whole lot. My rule of thumb is take the big number they give you, that big huge number, and cut it in half. That's probably going to be more like your realistic range. Now, there is one other very important thing I want to point out about that range test. I got a total of 31 miles before the bike was, I could have squeaked out another like mile or two on flat ground, but it was pretty much out of power at that point. But when I hit 25% battery remaining, there was a noticeable drop in power. So once you got down to 25% battery remaining, it was a big fall off. It was not really going to 20 miles an hour on throttle only anymore. And when I tried the hill climb again at that pace, it made it, but barely under throttle. I mean, the first time I went up the hill with a full battery, it was like 12 miles an hour. It just went up no problem. At 25% battery, it was struggling. It was going like 4 or 5 miles an hour. It did drop off when the battery got lower. But range tests are a pretty inexact science. There's so many things that factor into it, but hopefully that gives you a good idea of what a typical rider can get out of this bike. Now, I did take some good footage out riding this bike, doing some hill climbs, some short, steep hill climbs, and the top speed testing, and what it's like experiencing the torque sensor on this bike. So let's take a look at some of that footage. All right, let's see what kind of top speed we can get pedaling out of this Adventure 2 bike. I'm in 7th gear. All right, so there's 23, 5, 26, 27, 28. It's easy to hit 30 on this. Let's go to 8th gear. 31 and a half, 32. Like 32 and a half. About the most I can do. My legs are burning. All right, let's go climb some steep hills with the Adventure. I'm just going to downshift into, I'm just going to go whole way to 1st gear. I got the most power here. And I'm in turbo mode. Just going to pedal up these steep little hills. I'm not even getting off the seat for that one. I might have to for this big hill. This is like a almost a 30-degree incline. Very steep. Let's get a little speed. And I made it. Didn't even have to get up off the seat. Had enough power in turbo mode, first gear, to blaze right up that thing. Pretty good. Now, I've been really enjoying the torque sensor on this bike. That was a great addition to the updated model of the Aventure. And if you don't know the difference between a torque sensor and a cadence sensor for your pedal assist, most bikes come with cadence, which just means the bike recognizes when you're pedaling and it starts delivering you power. And it delivers you power until like predetermined mile per hour marks. So when you're pedal assist 1, it gives you power until you hit like 12 miles an hour. When you're in pedal assist 4, it's delivering power all the way until you hit like 23 miles an hour. This bike doesn't do it that way. The power delivery from the pedal assist is connected to you, the rider. It only delivers you power when you push on the pedals. As you can see right now, I'm riding at 6 miles an hour and I'm in turbo mode. Because I'm just turning the pedals and I'm not pushing on them, the bike says, okay, it doesn't need power. You can't do this on a cadence sensor bike. It would be, if you were in pedal assist 1, it would just constantly be trying to get you to 12 miles an hour. It would just keep dumping power until you got there. This one, it only gives me power when I start pushing hard. And it takes right off in turbo mode. You got tons of power, right? Look at that, we went 20 in no time flat. Much better system. It really connects you to the bike. You can ride the bike at a low speed and a high pedal assist level. It kind of eliminates the need to constantly be switching pedal assist level, because you just got power on tap whenever you want it, based on just how hard you decide to push on the pedals. And it's so hyper responsive, it's crazy. So when I'm coming up to an intersection and I see a car off in the distance and I want to scoot across the intersection quickly, right? I don't use the throttle, because the throttle's got like a delay and a gradual takeoff. I just hit the pedal assist like that. It's a much faster getting up to speed. It's way more responsive than the throttle is, honestly. So I find myself not using the throttle much on this bike when I want instant power. You get it faster by pushing on the pedals. All right, we made it to our hill climb area. I'm gonna stop right here at our starting point. We're already in turbo mode. We do these throttle only, and I got a marker up there where I stop the timer. The fastest bikes do this in 22 seconds. Those are, I'm talking about 750 watt e-bikes. They're able to do it in 22 seconds, the fastest ones. I don't think this is gonna do that. I think it'll be close, but not quite. Just given the feel of the throttle, it's a little delayed. So I think it's gonna take a minute to get up to speed. We'll see, here we go. 3, 2, 1, go. Yeah, see that delayed takeoff that's gonna hurt its time, but I mean, it's got plenty of power behind the throttle here so far. Let's see how it does. It gets a little steeper up here after we round this little curve. Yeah, I can already tell it's not gonna be the fastest one, but it's having no issue doing this at all. I weigh 180 pounds, just so you know. And we've got the time right there. No problem, went right up at throttle only, no assistance from me at all. All right, well, that was my ride experience with the Aventure 2 bike from Aventon. What'd you think? Did I cover everything you wanted me to cover? Did I give you a couple things about the bike maybe you weren't expecting? If you got a question and I didn't cover it, drop in the comments. I'll do my best to answer if I can. But if I had to sum up this bike, I'm gonna say, here's the thing I'm gonna say. Good solid power, had plenty of power to do all the hill climbs that I needed to do. Good speed, I got almost 33 miles an hour out of this bike pedaling it. Nice solid speed, rides tight. No shakes and rattles in it, comfortable ride position. Love the torque sensor, that was great. Brakes are great. Really didn't have a whole lot of complaints about it, just that I have to use the app to change the speed. I didn't want to have to do that, but not a huge deal. The fit and finish on this bike is excellent, especially at $18.99 purchase price. It feels and it rides and looks higher end than what it's priced at, I think anyway. So I really feel it is a good solid offering from them, but it's up to you to decide if this is the one for you or not. You know, I don't take commissions from e-bike companies. I don't get anything if you buy one. I'll link it in the description below, but it's up to you to decide if this is the right fit for you or not. I hope you found this video helpful, informative, at least entertaining. If you did, consider hitting subscribe. And check out the Aventon website. They got multiple bike offerings. Comes in step through, multiple frame sizes, step over, and there's also Aventon level and the cinch. There's a whole bunch of them they got on the website too. That might just be what you're looking for. Yeah, hope you found that helpful. Talk to you all later. Thanks.